All systems go. Clear for liftoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, back for another edition of the First Look Show here on the SHIPIT Nation YouTube station. We got Week 14 ahead. One of my favorite shows to always do. Got my guy Degenerate75 here with me. Just a simple man with a simple process, coming off of another big GPP win. Degen, what's going on, my friend? Taking it down last night, 25K plus for yourself, and the community had a big day as well. I'll show it all off in a minute, but I'll bring you in first. What's going on?
I mean, if you're going to live the Jameis slut lifestyle, you got to be there. I don't even typically play Showdown that much. I just, I'm not as much into NFL Showdown as I am into PGA Showdown. More of a main slate guy. But when I see Jameis and I see a contrarian narrative I can go with for the game, the game narrative that everybody was playing, I'm in. And Jameis, he always delivers. He's just, the guy doesn't know how to do anything but throw touchdowns and pick sixes.
Yeah, the best was last night really did set up well for it. I leaned to the under a lot more, so I'll definitely take my L on that. I thought it could stay under. Everybody loved the over. I teased that the YouTube chat they're now 1-87 on picking the over-under correctly, but they loved the over, and I just said, I could see where it could fail a little, but interestingly enough, it was just flipping the build. Everyone on Bo Nix or Sutton, and it was essentially Jameis or Judy, and even if you want to put in Njoku, I know some, how it shook out in the exact ending is different, but just to say it was all those guys that you could have flipped it around to on the other side. And sometimes it's as simple as that in these showdown slates. You don't have to look for complete diamonds in the rough as much as you have to look at some of the builds and unique captains. So I thought that was a good call out there as well. Shout out to Go Collect, Sean Sullivan, Bill Bench, Hart. Nick says, I can't be the only one who goes back and watches this Sunday mornings. I don't rewatch it, Nick, but I even cut out my notes where I'm put it down to just the first look. I literally ripped that apart so that I could still get some ideas on Sunday, and we had some good ones there last week. But Degen, I'm just going to bring it up here quick. It was big day for the community, so I want to just show this off. Big week, I should say, as a whole. So let me take Nick's comment down. This was your post last night. Nice to see our guy Q Smat was right behind you, and behind that, our guy Jay Bannock. A shout out to Bannock there, just always crushing it. And let's go over here. Another big monster night. This was just last night, and NBA and NFL. And then I added it at the bottom, but we also had randomly yesterday on the show, Hoop, Title, and myself, we're talking about FanDuel DFS, and I always make the joke that FanDuel sucks for Showdown, but lately we've seen some big, solo ships. And Hoop goes, yeah, the guy last night won it with 100K up top. And then just randomly in our Discord, if I can go through here and find it, I think it's right. Where'd that go now? It's right here. Randomly just pops in, yesterday at 11:50 a.m., goes, I took this down on FanDuel last night, and it's the 100K solo chop from the night before, and that was on top of the weekend that we had with college football. Shout out to our guy Nick, who's out there right now, 20K. We had the winner of the flagship college football for 50K. We had 100K for Steve Jam, $100 single entry into $100,000, first ever big-time score like that. 92,000 for our guy Kenny W. And then you saw it in the Discord too, right? Just all these insane ROIs that people are finding, $200 into 12K and whatnot. So huge week over at the Nation. Any thoughts on that stuff? It just keeps going.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be that guy that just wakes up and sees $100,000 in my account and didn't even realize it. That's what I want to be that guy. Yeah, that's nice.
Let me be that guy on FanDuel. By the way, I just found this. Shout out to our guy Marley. Been on fire in the showdown streets last night. The second best lineup, still worth 11K. It was a pretty unique setup he had there, and just somebody else got there. I think it was first was unique, second was unique. Sorry, he had the third best lineup, and it was chopped, but less chopped, so it's still worth almost $12,000. So congrats to Marley, and just a ton of other good winners out there. If you guys want to get in on the action, you can still get in. Ton of different promos going on. I'll run through them quickly, but most of them are here. You can use BF50. We extended it for Cyber Monday and just let it stay turned on. It is first month, half price off, all access. So you saw the NBA winners last night too, a bunch of NBA winners in the streets there. But the rest of football does include college football, whether you have it or don't. If you have it in your state, it's an added bonus. If you don't, it's still only $99 for all of the rest of NFL right through Super Bowl, or $129 if you want to get on the action there with the Shiptimizer. And again, you can see it here if you want the tutorials, go there. Last one. we're going to review the big guy winner from last week before we get to the first look. And just real quick on my X right now, and I reposted it on SHIPIT Nation. If you want to go see all those other winners and whatnot, the link is there. 1,500 entries, completely rake free, $5 5 max. Let's get into it, DJ.
Hey, while we're pushing it, I want to tell you, I got a big surprise coming for all the PGA people, because you got to know 80% of the people that are going to watch this also follow us for PGA. So yes. Big surprise coming. Already working on it with my team. We will have it out by the new year. You're going to love it. Trust me, it's going to be special. I'll announce it later this month.
Things we love to absolutely hear. And also you and I are going to be working over the next week, I think, just to pick up a couple different shows that we're going to do. What are we calling them? Primers? PGA primers?
Yeah, I like that. Get them ready. Bust out the primer. Ready.
Yeah, so we're going to have some content coming your way when it comes to that as well. But yeah, we've got everything and more covered over here. Our guy Lee Aldrich, even on the off weeks, like the hero this week, he's still out there grinding the streets and putting that stuff in the Discord. We'll have all the showdown coverage. And we talked about a little bit yesterday. I know it's a football show, but just, about the people with the projections around the industry, like showdown projections are all of a sudden just carbon copy of the main slate when there's like a completely different wave edge on Saturday, round 3. And, Cantland Xander will be in the worst of it by a mile, yet they just have their same projection as the original projections. And versus what we're doing is obviously totally different. Sweaty tryhards in the back end, changing it up. So anything else to add on that if you got it?
No, no one will work harder, and we will, I think we already were widely considered to have the best ownership and projections. I can assure you that will only be better in 2025 with some nicer tools, with another nice tool in addition to the Stone, which is always improving.
Yeah, you're speaking my language. Yeah. All right, let's get into it. NFL first look. This was the winner last week. And by the way, 2 totally unique lineups. Just got to shout this out. Isariga came in first and second with 2 unique lineups. So pretty good job on a tough week. And this was what they had for their winner, though. It was Bryce Young with Adam Thielen. It had Evans and Bucky on the run back. Then it had Kamara, Chase Brown, ate the chalk at running back. It had Ladd McConkey, lower owned in our big guy than other places. And, interesting to note, Evan Ingram, and then who stuck up for his quarterback last week. I know that hurt you a little bit. And then Seahawks, the opposite side of the Jets. Funny enough, both sides got there. The Jets had a little bit more. I think they had 18. But it was still, or 16, but it was still good on both sides. Thoughts on this lineup?
I mean, the chalk got there last week, so thinking you can avoid all the chalk at NFL and find success, it just ain't going to be the case. The key is which chalk is acceptable to eat and which one are you going to try to fade, and playing that game is part of the most important thing of having success in NFL. And it looks like most of the chalk he played got there. And then he got a little bit different with the Bryce Young Thielen connection, which I love because that definitely delivered. And if you can just get a cheap stack, you can eat a lot of chalk elsewhere and still be quite a bit different and ship these things.
This has to be a higher Thielen number than the industry too. Are people all in on the Thielen pivot from the David Moore chalk at 3,500, just moving it up to Adam Thielen? So shout out to that. And then, just putting it together in a different way, Bryce Young in a skinny stack and then being able to still run $2 on the other side. And you save the money from Baker and you use that somewhere else to bump up your lineup. Really nice build overall. So congrats to you. Obviously gets the shipper for $1,000. Let's pull it up, though. Let's get into this week. We got 10 games. I think it's our same, 7-3 split that we're used to. So the afternoon's got the Seahawks, Cardinals, the Bills, Rams, the Bears, 49ers, who will be a talking point this week for sure to round out the slate. But let's go back up to the top and start it off. This is the Stone over at SHIPIT Nation, best tool in DFS. I mean, you credited it last night. I'm just a simple man with a simple process. I use the best tool in DFS, the Stone, and let the juices flow. And we're going to let the juices flow here again, previewing the Week 14 first look. Let's start it off. Jets at the Dolphins. First look, first thoughts on this one, DJ.
I mean, how many times I got to say this? When the Dolphins are at home, I almost will always set a rule that my lineup must contain at least one Dolphin in it. That just someone's going to go off. That implied 26-point total. There's just no way that a Chan or Hill or Waddle or Jonnu, one of them is not going to have a big game. The key is trying to pick out which one. And I honestly, I'm never a Tua stack kind of guy, but depending on what we see the rest of this slate, I might consider it this week because the guy, he plays really well down there. And, the Jets, they kind of suck. And I like playing people against the Jets.
Yeah, they're pretty done. They seem pretty done, at least, or cooked, if you will. But just to note, we're still waiting on the big Tyreek week, right? So $7,100 there. Achane is the one with the matchup. You look at the Stone right here, rush defense, D grade over there. It's not the best, so you can run all over them. They are 6.5-point favorites at home. He does get a ton of work regardless of game script.
Big price jump, though.
But that, I was just going there, so you read my mind. 8,200. So I guess that's kind of the question, how it's going to shake out, because if again, we'll look at the whole slate. It's a first look. That's why we do this. But you saw last week, right? With like, you were playing the Jacksonville side, so I guess, but Mixon was 8K last week. And I think he came in, he got a little late steam, more than we had him around 12 or 13%. I think he came in at 17 or 18. So he did get some late steam, but that's also because more people got comfortable with a $3,500 David Moore. So it's not like they got much on the back end. Once he got just his 9 points in the higher stakes stuff, you can get away with it. But in the larger field tournaments, it was tougher. I think these 8K price tags are harder to get to on these running backs right now because you just have so many guys that come into that 7K and below range. So we'll see as the rest of the slate goes on. But I like this call. I like the Miami side. I guess the only thing that's enticing, and I'm pretty done with the Rodgers stuff, but is if you did land on, the run backs. So what makes the Tua thing you mentioned, interesting is I'm still okay with Devontae Adams at 6,700 or Wilson at 66. It's not exciting, but it makes sense and it's going to fit the game script. So I'd be more than comfortable landing there if I did.
And I would be careful with Breece Hall. I mean, I watched a lot of him last week, and there was a lot more Braylon Allen. So I think that soft tissue bullshit injuries are probably going to keep him more around like 65% of the plays. And you're usually paying for Breece because he gets like 80% of the plays. So keep an eye out for that one.
Yeah, checking it out here. Kenny says, happy double tight end. We'll see as we go along. If it's a double tight end week, I guess Jonnu Smith, by the way, up to 5,300. If you think people keep chasing that one, I know you've been making fun of that ownership for quite a while, and he somehow continuously seems to get there, but now 5,300. It's a bit much, right?
I mean, that's steep. I mean, he's getting into that elite pricing, but when you look at his results and basically how he's become their new Waddle, it's almost like makes sense.
Kind of suck? No, they suck. That's easy. So shout out to Takedown there. And then Bryant, congrats. I saw in the Discord this morning. Maybe it was from last night. Maybe it was from this morning. I can't remember. I think it was $7,500. So congrats to Bryant. Awesome. Nice ROI there as well. So that's huge. Love to see that. We were talking pre-show, DGen, about this, this player, and now we come to the spot right away. It's the Falcons at the Vikings. Still waiting on a big Justin Jefferson game, by the way, too. We just had this conversation about Tyreek, but Jefferson has not been able to find a 28 or 30 type point game yet that we've seen. And Bijan on the other side is who we were talking about. So talk to me about Bijan. Talk to me about this game. How do you see this one playing out?
I mean, I just feel like every week Bijan, I'm like, what am I missing here? Like, he was 16% last week, and he was my highest exposed player, and I just don't get why people don't want to play Bijan. He gets like elite usage. He is an elite talent, and he delivers. I memean, he's got to have out of the last 6 weeks, I would bet 5 of them he's been over 25 points, and he's almost always sub 20%. And he has a floor of like 18, and I just don't get why people are not playing him like they play these other guys. So I hope people just continue to stay off Bijan. I think he outproduces what he should be owned every single week.
Any thoughts on this? So I had a topic of discussion in Discord this morning, and I want to bring this up now because it's using the stone. It's using everything we got over at SHIPIT Nation, and then some of your thoughts just to tie into it. But I think that's what people need to realize, right? Like, you use this tool a ton. I use this tool a ton in all sports. And for example, the grade here, like, but it's not a good matchup on the ground. Well, one, you got to deep dive and see who did the Vikings play against for running backs. But two, doesn't just the usage alone and the ability and the superstar running back that you're up against outweigh the matchup for you pretty much every time, especially if it means it's coming with a fair price and low ownership?
Yeah, I mean, plus I go over and I look at his targets. He's averaging 5 targets a game. That's a way for him to get a lot of points right there. I mean, that right there is almost, if he's getting 5 targets a game, you can probably bet that that's going to get him a 10-point floor right there alone, right? And they're dogs, and he gets to play almost all of the third down work when they're dogs out of the backfield. So a 7 or 8 target game isn't out of line for him. And if they get behind, the script only benefits Bijan even more. They get away from Algier. So I like him even more in a script where they are 5-point dogs.
Yeah, but Tyler Algier, you just talked about it. It's always the same thing. That's baked in. It's priced in. We know they're going to end it. But honestly, I think it was like just last week where you didn't. I said to Nades in the Discord, because we always make fun of this and we talk about it on the Takedown Breakdown. What do you know? They don't try and jam Tyler Algier for once, and Bijan takes 2 runs and jams it in. And one was from further out, gets the first down, gets first run the next play, jams in the touchdown. It's like that's what they've learned, and that's what they're moving towards. Doesn't mean it's always going to happen that way, but I do think that is pretty interesting. So I like that call. That's why I wanted to bring it up. Anything on the Vikings side? I know Aaron Jones disappointed some people last week, even though he did eventually get a touchdown and get in the box, but he started so slow. A lot of us, myself included, did want to make Justin Jefferson happen last week. We thought it was going to be the week. Is there any potential or possibility here with it being like Cousins versus Darnold, maybe just a bunch of throwing back and forth, that we could see the game out of Jefferson finally at 7,800?
I mean, the problem is the Vikings, their pace is slowed way down. Part of the reason Justin Jefferson doesn't have that big game is they just don't run enough plays, right? And, like if I'm playing the Vikings this week, I actually think I would lean more towards like Addison. His biggest games have come at home, and I like that $5,300 price tag, and he seems to get more of the home run balls. And if, we're going to have a game with fewer plays because of the pace, I think I would rather have the bigger upside Addison bombs than I would the 12-yard curls that Jefferson catches all days.
Yeah, and price is nice too. So even if you want to do like the Bijan Addison secondary stack, that's more than fine. I know like a 2-touchdown Addison day means a lot for Darnold. It would obviously look pretty good and be helpful. So if you wanted to go that route, I'm not against it, but I don't hate it when you're just looking at price plays and the reasoning that you gave to roll out Addison there and go from there. So
and I'm never a big fan of paying over $6,000 for a quarterback that offers zero rushing upside, like Sam Darnold. Like I feel like Sam Darnold should be $5,200. That's my opinion about it.
He should probably be priced like Derek Carr at $5,100 because that's kind of the same type of thing, right? So let's use that. Let's go to Derek Carr here. We got the Saints. Kamara, a little bit of a price bump up to 8,000 this week, going up against the Giants here. That's, popping off the stone at the beginning is the rush defense. We know Kamara, talking about, Bijan earlier, gets the targets. Now Taysom Hill out for the season, right? And who knows how long. I mean, that's a bad injury for him. And so tough to say what happens there. But for at least for what we know for going into this week, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, I don't put him in the same bucket as Nick Westbrook-Akine just because we have talked about it since it happened. It is more of like the Shaheed role, so at least I can somehow validate that in my mind versus the same play to Westbrook-Akine every time. But how are you handling the Saints team? And then what's your thoughts over on the Giants side with all the stuff they've got going on?
I mean, the Giants, it's a couple of their stud defenders are out for the season. So that actually kind of, makes me think that their defense, which has actually been reasonably solid this year, may not be as good. The pass rush may not be as good. And now with Derek Carr not having to worry about Taysom Hill vulturing all his, touchdowns, Derek Carr might be a pretty sneaky play at quarterback. Problem is, who the hell do I stack him with? Like, you know what I mean? Like Kamara, I guess, and MVS, but like that's so predictable. But I will say Derek Carr is a guy with a decent total playing a Giants team that is pretty bandaged up right now. Could be the guy that gets you 3 touchdowns and maybe you get lucky and get 300 yards out of him because you don't have Taysom Hill stealing, vulturing his touchdowns and whatnot.
Anything at all on the Giants side?
I mean, I think Malik Neighbors is always game. It's just I don't know that Drew Lock is good enough to lock in and get Neighbors the 12 targets he needs to kind of get there.
Yeah, that's what's crazy about it. For
that's my concern. I need somebody who knows how to get Neighbors the ball. That was the one thing that old Danny Dimes could do was get Neighbors the ball. I don't know that Lock has that ability.
And they didn't believe us. It was last week's First Look show when we said Danny Dimes to the Vikings. They said no way in hell. Even the comments had people calling it out. And sure enough, where'd he end up? The Vikings. So interesting. Yeah, I don't have too much to add on this one. I guess the Carr one, I bookmarked it here. I wrote it down. I'll need more convincing or more, thoughts as the week goes on. But I guess it is what you said. It could be like the old school, speaking of the Saints just in general, it could be like the old school Drew Brees, where he would just get Kamara and Mike Thomas to drag him along. And it's like, he didn't really do that much. They did everything, but the pass came from him. Therefore, it turns into this. Jawan Johnson, the chat asked about with no Taysom. You think about that one?
Yeah, I mean, like that guy, I've just been waiting on him to be good for 3 years, and he never has been. So, like, I'm getting tired of waiting. Like, everybody's always talked about, like what a physical freak he is, and it just doesn't convert into fantasy points.
You know who else people said that about? Now it does convert into fantasy points is David Njoku. And certainly, look at him now with Winston in there. It's just insane. The guy's an absolute beast. We've been waiting for this. Someone posted the thing of him last night when he comes to the stadium with the fur coat on and the mask after he burned himself and everything. He's just a beast, man. It's crazy. But finally getting to see him unleashed. So I thought that was interesting. I think I saw yesterday, just quick note on the Giants, I think Theo Johnson hit the IR.
He gone for the year.
Yeah, he's done.
I think it was him and Dexter Lawrence. I think I saw, and so, I thought maybe one other defender because I remember thinking, damn, that's a lot of injuries for the poor Giants who already suck balls.
Yeah, I got Dexter and Theo on my list, but yeah, that is interesting to note. So just keep that in mind. But let's move on. Let's go to the Panthers at the Eagles, and Philly gets their turn now. Right, we've seen these teams going up against the Panthers. It is a 12-point home favorite with almost a 30-point implied team total. Going up against these Panthers, do we run Bryce Young back again at 52, or what do we do here?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, that seems like a really big line for how decently well the Panthers are playing, right? Like, I mean, like they're playing real football right now. People are going to chase that Bryce Young, and he actually kind of seems to be a thing, but this just seems like a real bad spot for him. Like this could get out of hand real quick. But if they're going to play tough, I mean, you do got to love the run back options. I would avoid Devonta Smith for one more week. I was really surprised he wasn't activated this week. I figured he would kind of play a limited role, but he didn't. So it lets me know that like the hamstring, I think is what it is nagging him pretty bad. And you do not want to play a guy like that with those twitchy muscles that has a bad hamstring. So, now you're looking at a $9,000 Saquon or an $8,100 AJ Brown. As much money as you may save with Bryce Young, you're going to spend on the run back. So keep that in mind with this game.
Yeah, that's I don't like. We haven't had too many 9Ks right this season because even when people
remember like twice.
Yeah, so I was just trying to think of that, but I guess that's the one note as value comes up. This is certainly going to be a spot that people want to land. You got to kind of think of it a couple of ways, I guess. Like it's the obvious one is if it's Barkley. The obvious result, if it's not Barkley, is going through the air. And it's like you said, it's Hurts, it's Brown, and then you just cut it off there. Don't even need a run back if you don't want one, but there is certainly options if you do. But then isn't there a world too, you've talked about this in the past, where it just could get completely spread out and sort of because of price matters as well. Like what if Barkley gets you 101 and a touchdown? How much does that really help versus being at $9,000? With Jalen Hurts, $7,800. If he vultures it from Barkley, that hurts him. But then how much does it if he's almost $8K? And then how do you put it all together? Any just quick thoughts on that before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people forget like just multipliers. Like you need these guys usually to win a GPP, typically to get you at minimum 3x and preferably 4x. And for Saquon to do that, he's gonna have to get well into the 30s. And you can't just assume 30-point weeks because that's almost certainly going to be a 2-touchdown week or a double bonus kind of week, or at least one bonus with a whole bunch of receiving yards. So you got to be careful of that because he could put up 23 points, which would be a nice week, and not even come close to paying off what you need for that $9,000 you spent on him.
Yeah, one thing that seemed light too is his targets, for 9,000. Like you're looking at
less than three a game on average this season.
Yeah, so this is Spencer Smith in the chat here says this game is an X out. I bet you not a lot of people think like that, but yet I tend to why I brought that up. Not that I tend to agree necessarily. It's only Tuesday, but I'm saying I could definitely see a scenario where that's the case, and that's why I wanted to talk it through because that is something. And even when you look at the Hurts AJ Brown combination you talked about, which I'm fine with, you look at that one, you're looking at 16K give or take. And that's, you're still going to need almost 50 points to feel pretty good about that out of the two of them. Is it possible? Absolutely. Look at the two we're talking about, but it's not something you can just hand them on a platter and say that's the case. And so it is really interesting, this spot
50
for this
points would be the floor. That would be the floor of what you would probably need for them. And yeah. I think we'll color the stone. This will probably be colored blowout potential because you do got to worry that this game doesn't even have a fourth quarter because the Eagles are up 28-3. You do got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, if you get over to SHIPIT Nation and get the stone, highly recommend it. We just changed the color code at the top here. So you'll see right now everything has no designation, but we've had a really good season targeting picking the target games in purple and calling out the sneaky games in pink where they actually turn out to be the ones that are necessary and needed on the slate. So it makes it very easy. You got your grades here, the optimal versus the leverage. So you can see that was one thing last week too. And I know, let me talk about it from this perspective because we're going to go to the Browns and Steelers here in a second, but I just want to get your opinion on this because again, the inventor of the stone and creator of all this and bringing it over in the merger, we're lucky to have all this for the members over at SHIPIT Nation. I just want to say though, the optimal is based on the projection points, then it's simulating it against this current slate at hand with the salaries at hand and what's expected and what you can build and do with it. Last week, Chase Brown was 33% optimal. After him was Kamara at 21%. After Kamara was, I think it was Bucky at 14.8. So just a note, and I know again, if you're fading Chase Brown because of ownership, that's fine because you're fading him because of ownership. You know what you're getting yourself into. But do you ever look at that stuff on the stone? That's one of the things I incorporate into my process where I'm like, okay, good chalk versus bad chalk. I can, especially in higher dollar, smaller field, I feel good about Chase Brown. He's going to be 60% in there. A lot of people have him already. It's not going to kill me, but I'm looking at the other options and it actually, it felt like there was a lot of options. It dropped off pretty quickly for the optimal rates. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the Chase Brown wasn't near as gross as the Panthers wide receiver everybody was getting on, right? There's different levels of grossness. And to me, looking at that leverage, how often they show up in the optimal versus how much they're going to be owned, using that leverage to me is a great way to kind of value how ridiculous are people being with this guy. And, the more guy just got ridiculous. So I just got off of him. I was like, we'll build different somewhere else. So yeah, I think that for me, part of my process is definitely looking at that.
Yeah, I like that call. Now, we had this when it was booty that week, the first week when everyone's like, you're just it was a create a player value play because they're not really in the best spot. They're cheap, sure, but there's a bunch of cheap receivers. Why are they the one? And that was kind of the situation last week. We knew Coker was out, so sure. But again, it's not like this was a guy that we were all super high on playing David Moore all season that now here's his big shot or his big chance. So definitely another way. And even, Takedown says, I've got to learn how to use the stone better. That's what it's all about, brother. We want to keep getting better, working on our game, and that's part of it. The stone is a great tool to have under your belt. Browns at the Steelers. Thoughts on this one? We just saw, the stone does another thing last week. I said it on the Sunday show. I was like, the only thing that it does, I do trust the stone, and it's been very good to me. So I said, you know what? It does. I can't get onto the Steelers here, but it was so condensed. It was just play it with Pickens, play it with Freiermuth, even Najee if you wanted to do something crazy. But I was like, there's not many guys there, and it made sense to me, but I couldn't get to that spot this week. Where do you think people go here? Steelers home against the Browns.
I mean, this feels like a sneaky game to me, but like anytime Jameis is in one in a game, it almost always feels sneaky to me, right? The guy he'll throw the ball around, and we saw just last week the Steelers can give up some yards through the passing game. And if you think that Joe Burrow is just infinitely better than Jameis Winston at throwing the ball down the field, you're wrong. I mean, Jameis Winston can fucking throw the ball, and he doesn't care. And I think that this could be a game where they possibly, it could shoot out, or the Browns could get behind, and Jameis could just come out throwing it all around. And the best part is they have a really, really concentrated passing tree right now. It's basically just Judy Moore, Njoku. Those three guys are getting about 80% of the target share. So if you do want to run Winston, you have a super cheap stackable guy, and I think he's a double stackable dude, and you're all of a sudden you're getting a really cheap double stack in, and you got Steelers to run it back with Pickens, Freiermuth, people like that.
Yeah, this is the question from Nick, is how chalky will it get? Because both these guys had really good weeks. You see on the stone, even the pace, they have been letting Russ cook. Tomlin lets him chuck it around. It's worked out as of late, and obviously we just saw what Jameis did last night. The stacking pieces seem easy there. It's just interesting to me because
43-point team total. It's not going to get crazy popular with a 43-point team total or game total.
I tend to agree. And the only thing I wonder is because there's multiple combination pieces, right? So we just had the AFC North battle of Pittsburgh at Cincy that broke the slate, which is what it literally was 100. I'm a sample size guy. That was a 50 years, 100 plus games of sample. That was the highest scoring first half, I think they said, of those games ever, or maybe the total game as well. And then you saw the Browns last night. Now you get another AFC North battle, but this one could disappoint because of that. But they do both have a pretty good pace, condensed offenses. You could see where this could work, but we'll have to wait and see as the week goes on. If it ends up a sneaky game, I would definitely have some interest in both sides. Should note, just back on the previous game, the chat mentioned as well, week to week on Dallas Goedert. So I guess if I'm still not ever super high on Calcaterra. I just, is he going to do enough for you on a slate? We haven't really seen it. So any quick thoughts on that if Goddard was to be out?
Yeah, I would like A.J. Brown more. He would be the one guy I'd want from the Eagles in that case, just because I'm telling you, Devonta Smith, I'd be worried about limited load or not being as explosive as normal. So it's like, who's left at pass catcher? It's just A.J. Brown.
Yeah, I like the AJB call just there because of that. So we'll move on. Let's go to the Raiders at the Bucks.
Sneaky game. Feel sneaky.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I'll let you talk about this one. I know there's some, there's always some Baker love kicking around. Obviously, we just saw what Bucky did again, even getting injured and coming back, and Evans, etc. But what about the other side, Aiden O'Connell?
Yeah, I mean, he looked great last week. And if he's going to play like that, you basically know Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers are going to be his dudes he's going to throw it to. And they got a 20-point team total. The Bucs have not been playing as good a defense as they were earlier in the season. It seems like all their games are 27-24. You start letting the Raiders get to 24 points. Aiden O'Connell stacks look pretty nice. And the Bucs have some of the best running backs because Irving is Bucky's coming up as a star. Evans is going to get 3 or 4 red zone targets. And I think people are forgetting that Cade Otton is still probably a top 7 fantasy tight end out there. And I feel like he's due for a sneaky good week and could be part of one of those double tight end stacks that our boy, was that Kenny earlier talking about.
Yeah, he loves it. That's why I brought it up. He called it last week in our Discord over at SHIPIT Nation. He said, enjoy the Bryce Young winning someone $1 million this week, guys. And not many listened, and the 555 Millie Maker winner was Bryce Young, and he couldn't get to it, but he still had himself a big week. He played the Baker side of that game and got some nice little run out there with Bucky Irving and Evans down the stretch that he wanted. So congrats to him. He had, I think it was 82,000 or 92,000 on the week. So big week for Kenny. But this is interesting. What did you say on so 2 thoughts I might have missed, but one, I know you said O'Connell and Bowers. Do you like any of these wide receivers particularly that you would put with him?
What, for the Raiders? Myers, right? Like, yeah, Bowers and Myers are getting like 55% of the targets. I love that concentrated tree. I wouldn't play any of the other ones, just those two. And I think you could double stack them or just skinny stack either one. Although I will say Brock Bowers getting up to 6,500 is kind of getting to be elite pricing for tight end.
Yeah, I'm wondering about that too. Like, I think AOC for sure, you could just do a skinny stack and you could run it with like Myers and Otten on the other side, where most are going to be looking at some other. So I think they'll look at other angles. It'd be like O'Connell double stack or O'Connell with Bowers first. And then it's going to be more likely that Bucky at just 6,600 or Evans still at a fair price of 72, where people feel more comfortable going with that. I think there is other ways that you can even mix and match within this game. So I like the idea of having more, early on at least, of having more stacks around this game so that I can get different combinations. And you've done a good job talking about that in weeks past. Did you see did Jacob hit you up on the $111 11 max?
Yeah. I was wondering, because you tweeted it literally as he sent it to me. I thought, how did Tambo see this whenever I got the dude from DraftKings telling me about it, like literally as it's coming out? I really like it. It's the $111 10 max.
Lobby though too. I'm always checking out that lobby to see, but I guess it was one thing about it was the payout structure wasn't as ideal. Like it was 20% to first, but then it did only go like, I think it's $750 for 10th.
Yeah. So like you won't even break even if you finish 10th, but there also wasn't a lot of people in it too, which is nice because
only 1,000 people or something.
Yeah, I don't like to play to try to hit the nuts. I like to hit pretty good lineups. Which, speaking of which, if you're going to this Jaguars game, I literally had 2 lineups last week finish in the 99 percentile that both had Trevor Lawrence with 1 point. So if Trevor Lawrence doesn't get knocked the fuck out, could have been quite the week, because I had him with some Parker Washington, some Brian Thomas, and then I ran it back with either Collins or Joe Mixon. So I had some really good lineups there, and Trevor doesn't die on the field. Could have been quite the good week because he was my low-owned stacked last week.
Yeah, I think that is always a good week. Like you said it yourself in Discord, but it was like, it is the truth. When you're getting that kind of money back, it's not ideal. Everyone's like, how would you ever be happy getting only that back? But it's like, no, it's not only that. That's everything. When my guy goes out completely, I wasn't, again, he had a great week. So I mean, everyone has different process. He wasn't close on my list. I felt like we didn't talk about him last week. So I even picked your brain before the show, because I'm always trying to get other concepts and ideas around it. Obviously, lots changed here now because they're going to hold him out forever. Like, there's no sense. I mean, I don't know what they'll do, but that was a big shot. So my point being, I wasn't as high on it, but I guess, I might have missed it too. So what's your thoughts this week on the Jaguars, and then Titans side as well? We can save these NWI jokes. Like, we get it. Everyone knows the joke now about this guy, but it's the same play every week. And last week he was kind of needed at 22 points or whatever, but it's going to be rare that that's going to be the case.
Mac Jones came in, was actually throwing the ball down the field quite nicely. He actually didn't look that bad. That was why a lot of my lineups were still able to get there, because he was still getting the ball to Ingram. He was still getting the ball to Brian Thomas Jr. He was still getting the ball to Parker Washington, and he came back and they almost won that game. So if Mac Jones is going to play like that, I don't even know his salary. I assume he's probably like 4,900 or something.
That's what he was last week, so I can't remember what I saw, but I think maybe I saw it for this week. I can't remember off the top of my head though.
But I mean, he could be viable, and the Titans are like a team that every week seems to be getting there as far as like scoring some points and keeping games competitive. And you got Pollard, you got Ridley, you have God himself, Westbrook-Ikhine, who is going to get a touchdown. This is a game that if you want to get really icky, like you're playing in something with 10,000 people in it, I think this is one where you could get in and build a cheap stack that nobody's building, and you have cheap run back options. And then you can go play those random studs, like if you want to play the Justin Jefferson or the AJ Brown, because you started with this, no one else is going to be on it.
And don't forget this too, the Calvin Ridley revenge game.
Love a good narrative.
Love a good narrative. We saw it with
Judy last week. That was the last night. That was part of it. Give me that revenge.
They literally just decided not to guard him at all. Like there was a guy in the Discord, or a guy in the YouTube chat yesterday talking about how, first of all, like, it wasn't like we thought Surtain was going to see him the whole game or anything. It's like Judy runs in the slot and everything too, and where Surtain doesn't usually go. But the funny part was like, Surtain knows his hip movements, so don't play Judy. I was like, that's the moment we all should have known to be all in. Like, that's
like at PGA when they said he hasn't picked up a club in 2 weeks. All right, well, I'm playing that motherfather. Like, give me those stupid narratives. I'm auto in on it. Whatever gets people off of it because they're overreacting to something, that's like gold for me to eat up.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the other thing too I wanted to say with this one is I also think it could be, just looking at it here, this D-. And I know this guy really disappointed some folks last week, Tony Pollard. 22 points at home, slight favorite. I think you could go back to the well on him and see. Like, it's, he definitely hurt some feelings last week. I think it would be a spot that you would go back in here. Obviously, some personnel changes and stuff. But in general, we could see where it is a bit of a letdown spot for Mac Jones as well. I like your call out if you are using him. One thing I loved that he did last week, you probably saw it because it was painful. He threw a bomb. He overthrew BTJ. And they were like, damn, like that was it. That was a 60-yard walk-in touchdown. And then everyone's like, the next play is like BTJ. And they're like, no, that went over his head. We're like, no. He literally threw to him for 60 yards the next play. He just didn't get in on that one. But it was like still, he went right back to it. And you got to love that, right? Out of a guy coming into the game and just nothing to lose.
Yeah, and the Jags have nothing to lose, and he has nothing to lose. If this is a week I play 60 lineups, he likely will be one of my 3 quarterbacks. If it's a week where I play 20 lineups, he will probably not be one of my 1 or 2 quarterbacks. So I'll kind of have to see how the week develops and then determine what contest I want to be in. Then I'll pick if I want to go with, how many stacks.
Yeah, an early look here, but just, I said jokes aside, but now I got to ask it because you brought up the God himself. Do you actually think people play NWI here based on sort of how it's been going? Like, what do you think his ownership actually gets to? Early thought.
I mean, you're like, I will not play him. If he's over 8%, I think people are being silly. Like he literally gets like 2 targets a game. Like he can't keep paying him off. It's like Breaking Bad. He can't keep getting away with this.
Yeah. Or he could, using your own words, because it's insane every single week. And it's literally the same play. It's like you can call
even when he does it, it's not like he's breaking the slate. He's basically just doing enough to make sure he wasn't a wasted spot in your lineup, right? It's not like he's going for 23 points.
Right. So last week was like the first week where he did. Nailed it, but last week was the only, and it also was just a product of, who did they play last week? Washington?
I think so. I don't know.
I think it was the Jaden Daniels stacks where he ended up and see, they used him as a run back. And I was well, at least you can say that out of it. But yeah, it's pretty wild when you see that happening. All right, we've got 3 afternoon games, and it kicks off with the Seahawks at the Cardinals. Gino. No is right in his name. I should just tell myself that and paint it on there. But Geno Smith, JSN, what are you doing here with this game? What's up with this?
First of all, this game strikes me. I have a feeling this will be colored as a chalky game. It just feels like, people love these afternoon games in the dome against these NFC West teams. So that right there is already going to put me off of it, right? The prices are kind of right. JSN, Marvin Harrison are about the right price I would want to pay to play them, but part of me is just like, I kind of want to stay away from this game if it's going to be popular. Maybe grab a piece or two and try to be different. But man, the Seahawks, Geno's, golly, I swear to God, I'm so lucky. I got him the 1 week he played well, and other than that, he's just not that good. Kyler seems to be back like he's in video game mode where he's not really focused and scoring a lot of fantasy points. There's just not a lot to be excited about here other than Trey McBride, who is like just an absolute manimal.
Yeah, do you like Trey McBride at this $6,100 price tag, or you like Bowers at $65?
I mean, if I had to pick one, give me McBride, just because I think that the touchdown variance has to score a touchdown coming up. That streak has to break. Like, there's no way you can catch 100 passes and not get a touchdown this season, especially when you're as talented as he is.
So I was just going to say this because, again, you talked earlier about we've been, eating up these things that people say and using them to our advantage in DFS. I'll call it right now. Bet the anytime touchdown. It's going to be the week where he gets you 3 for 30 and a touchdown. And it'll be like, but he got the touchdown, but he didn't get the catches and the yards this time. And that's going to be the way it goes. It just always seems to be something. And you can see it. That's my thoughts on this one. DK Metcalf, I know it's not showing up here on the stone yet or whatever. So he left the game momentarily, but he checked his knee and everything and came back, and they think it's all good. So would expect him to be a guy that's good to go here with Geno stacks. JSN has really come on lately at 6,300. So it's easy to stack. It's just, there is enough where he goes elsewhere, by the way. So one thing about Geno that has been a little bit different and why it's not been as good, or I play him enough to know this stuff, is I used to love that it was just sort of Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. And then when JSN started getting in the mix, it was like, all right, well, Tyler Lockett's kind of done. Let's just go with JSN and DK Metcalf or one of the other. Well, like last week, Barner, touchdown. Fant, drop touchdown, wide open. Like, he's going for different dudes when they get down to that red zone. And that's what kind of makes it a little bit trickier and worrisome when you're trying to stack it up, because if you don't get it right, it's great that you're in the right game in the right spot. But if you're on the wrong guys, it's not very helpful from that point. And last thing, anything on the MHJ, everyone was so tilted over him. The coach speak that he was going to get the passing offense was going to go through him. People were mad at the half, but he still had 7 targets at the half. He just only had like 2 or 3 catches. Second half, he gets a touchdown. He ends up with 12 targets on the day. I mean, he really came through on the coach speak enough, I think. But any thoughts on him at 6K?
I mean, I would be interested in him if I wasn't so disinterested in this game. If I have to pick, I think I'd just go McBride.
Yeah, and I also prefer, by the way, two guys like JSN, Walker, McBride, James Conner even. I would rather just pick my pieces in this game, to your point, early on, just first look, seeing it that way as well. So I think that's a good call out. And I think there's a lot that you can pick up where it's just you're grabbing the PPR points and moving on, or grabbing those points on the ground when lots are trying to go, game stack or 3-1s through the air and that sort of setup. So like that call out as well. Bills at the Rams. This game's kind of interesting. Big total, right? And just thoughts on this one early on, because last week was, you still got Kyron Williams at a fair price, Puka, Kupp at their sort of 7K price range. The Josh Allen stuff on the other side. Any thoughts on this one?
I mean, this is the first time in a long time I've considered an expensive quarterback. Josh Allen, like that guy can get us 30 and pay off that $8,000 price tag. Problem is, who the hell am I stacking him with? You know what I mean? It's like I feel not confident in any of those guys. Coleman's likely to be back. Cooper still isn't getting an elite role. Shakir's always out there. Kincaid, I don't even know what his status is this week. He just has too many guys. So if I were going to play Josh Allen, I'd almost consider a naked Josh Allen. And for the Rams, I'm just a Puka Nacua guy. I play him every week. To me, he's clearly established himself that he's the number one receiver over Kupp. And, I feel like whenever Kupp and Nacua plays, it kind of kills Kieran Williams' value. So I find myself always playing Nacua and not much else from the Rams.
Yeah, there was always that the Breakfast Boys narrative of Stafford and Kupp, but feels like Nakua's been taking him out for steak dinners, and Stafford forgot all about that shit. It's like, yeah, well, the wine and dine is a little bit better, so I'm going to keep going back to my boy Nacua, and the price doesn't really change that much. It stays right in that $7,500 range. He's at $7,700. Kupp went down a little bit, and that went up to Nacua, but it's not that much of a delta for 1 week, but we've seen it now for weeks since Nakua's been back. So definitely like that call. Even if you want to go the Stafford side, I'm okay with it. I don't love it as much because the price goes up there a little bit. So you mentioned it, but like Josh Allen naked and then Nacua or something like that, maybe is a way that you could get almost like what's considered a secondary stack if you can find the value pieces within. Even though it is your quarterback and an opposite wide receiver, it's a way that you could get different within a game and still get two really nice pieces.
It wouldn't be a weird if Josh Allen throws for 300 yards, rushes a touchdown in, gets you 25 rushing yards, and then throws 2 touchdowns to 2 slapdicks, like a fullback and Dawson Knox, right? And you really didn't need to stack him at all for him to get you those 32 points. And he could still end up getting there without taking any other Bills with him. So a naked Josh Allen isn't the craziest thing ever.
And funny enough, coming off the week, he literally did all of those things, plus magically threw a touchdown to himself, if you remember.
Guy's magic.
The hook and ladder. People were mad about that, but it's a rule, right? When you start throwing it forward, it cannot turn into a rushing play with a forward pass like that. It's just a wild stat in the way it all works out. But that I thought was pretty interesting and crazy stuff after he already ran one in and threw touchdowns and did everything else too. So yeah, I like that call. And I think it was Go Collect said it here too. Again, Kyle, these pieces are expensive, but it feels like this game goes over. That's what's tricky about some of these spots. But if you can see, I guess I'll stop there for 2 seconds before we go to the final game, is going back to the Eagles game. I don't compare them the same way. On the Eagles game, we're saying it could be so one-sided and so separated, or at least how I'm looking at it, is that's where it becomes tricky and then hard to pick it out from the other side. In this game, we kind of know that we think it's going to go back and forth and involve both sides. You could just get lucky if you don't go crazy and just pick a couple of pieces. And then even though other dudes do show up, it's not like anybody else got them all right either. So you just got to get your 2 or 3 pieces that you pick and go from there. And you could see that happen here. So I like this game for the afternoon even more than the first game. If you're late swapping, I think it's what you said. I think more people would be on the Geno game and you'd be able to move over here where it's a little bit more uncomfortable, but there's still a ton of options that just could just naturally end up getting there with some weird builds. So I don't hate that. Last game of the slate is the Bears at the 49ers. And the big talking point, I don't have the pricing in front of me, but I want to say he's in the 5K range, but Isaac Guerendo, he's in now. McCaffrey and Mason both hitting the IR. So thoughts on this game here. 49ers at home, 24-point team total.
I mean, Guerendo is going to be wildly popular. With this lack of value on the slate, he's going to be over 30%. You can already feel it. Guy's a stud. He's that dude that runs I think he's the only player to ever weigh in at 230 and run a 4.3 or something at the combine, something insane like that. So he definitely has home run ability. I don't know that I'm going to be able to eat that because I do not like first and second down back chalk. And I don't know how involved he'll be in the passing game. Have to see that. But I will tell you the Bears, like, this, Caleb Williams is kind of like turning into a fantasy guy. Like he's kind of like, they're kind of letting him play since they got the new OC, and him and DJ Moore or him and Roma Dunze or something like that. It just seems like a really sneaky little skinny stack to run against the 49ers and could get there. So that's something I'll be keeping an eye on.
Could it be like last week when you have Chase Brown popular on one side and people are looking for reasons to fade or ways to get different, and the way to get different is to go to Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, and something like that, and then use Garindo that way and hope that it goes back and forth and really cut into the product ownership by getting a stack on the opposite side? You think about that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the way to use Garindo, is use him in a correlated stack that nobody's using. I can't imagine Caleb Williams stacks will be over 5% owned this week. I can't imagine.
Yeah, I don't even think people remember Thanksgiving. They've already moved on to Monday Night Football from last night and things like that. But pretty interesting too. Caleb Williams, by the way, that was a rocky start. If you remember, even in our Discord over there, we ended up having the second half contest, and I think only 2 people out of like hundreds that said he would break 20, and he ended up with what, 24 or something. Yeah, after having
he rallied hard. It
was old school Deshaun Watson when he played for the Texans, like does nothing all game, but see you in the fourth quarter. Dax had games like that as well, where they just show up at the end of it. And that's pretty interesting for this one, because I don't think anyone's considering that, at least early on, from stuff that I've listened to or heard. So another way to get different in this game with Garindo would be that. Anything on the passing, like if Garindo, like you're talking about not being as interested because of a first and second down back, and we're rounding it out anyway. So any interest in any of the passing stack here, just because they are still at home, they are still favorites, it is still 24 points. What do you do to leverage it if not playing him, and if not going Caleb Williams stacks on the opposite side?
Well, if Purdy's back, I think Juwan Jennings becomes a play at 5,200, right? Like the guy's probably going to get 9 to 10 targets. I think he's fine. George Kittle, not so much. Like if I'm paying 5,800, I'm going to find a way to just get to Bowers or McBride there. Although George Kittle does make their team better, I don't know that he really is a great fantasy asset for us at 5,800. So that's about where I would be. And then Deebo Samuel, man, I think that dude may be a little washed. Like I think we're seeing he's not so great when he doesn't have that perfect efficiency that he's had the past like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, it's been something for sure. And that's kind of thing, like even back to the previous game when you were talking about Amari Cooper and some of these other guys that we've talked about, just been a tough scene for some of them, even like the Cooper Kupp stuff. He had a big game last week, but not the most previous, but the one before that, where, but it was one shot down the field that kind of brought those points up. You just have seen some of these guys just lay back a little bit more or not do as much. So it is interesting just to keep an eye on as the season goes on, how that always plays out. We're up to week 14 now. Any other thoughts, speaking of week 14, any final thoughts from you on this slate now that we've sort of seen the whole thing through all 10 games for the DraftKings main slate?
Last week of best ball, I'm glad that there's like 6 teams on buys, and they're teams that I was really light on. So I'm excited to see all my best ball bags hopefully shoot up this last week. So that's what I'll be watching outside of this DFS stuff.
Yeah. Do you got any good ones right now?
I mean, I'm advancing like 20%, which is like a little above average. Hopefully with a good last week, maybe we can jump up to 25%. We'll see.
Yeah, good luck this week, Bobby says, for all those third place best ball teams. So going to be keeping an eye on that. There's some bye week stuff like that going on, but we'll be all over it. I think that's going to do it, man. I don't have much else to add. If you guys want to get over to SHIPIT Nation, get the stone for this week and the rest of the season, you can do it. $99 for all that and more. And then if you want to add ShipTomizer for classic and main NFL slates, it's $129. If you want to get all access and get in the NBA streets, get in the other streets for all the other games, we got NHL and all the other sports that we carry, you can use BF50 and get 50% off your first month. But that's going to do it for this one, guys. Appreciate you watching. Make sure to smash the like, subscribe to the channel. We just hit 9,000 subscribers. So on Thursday afternoon, I guess, Hoop, Title, and myself will be on. It's Titles, Packers versus Hoops, Lions. And we'll be giving away the $549 all access with ShipTomizer package. So make sure you tune into that one. Anybody can win it, member, non-member, whatever. We'll have some fun on that show. Thank you so much for watching. For DGen and for myself, ToeTagginTambo, let's ship it.